Are you just entering the job market in your country?
Do you want to find a job, but don't know where to begin?
Do you want to learn the necessary skills to help you find and apply for a job?
Or maybe you already have a job, but want to find a different one?
If you answered yes to any or all of these questions, then this course is designed especially for you.
Welcome to English for Career Development, a 5-unit course which will help you through the different steps of the job application process.
This course is designed for high beginner to low intermediate English language learners. Language teaching, readings, games, and assessments are adapted to your English level. You do not need to have previous work experience or have already gone through the job application process. We will guide you through the necessary steps during this course. If you have a higher level of English, we have some more difficult activities for you to do.
In each unit, we will focus on a different step of the job application process. We'll begin with entering the job market. We'll then move on to writing a resume. Next, we'll focus on the cover letter. Following this, we'll discuss networking. Finally, we'll cover the job interviewing process. We hope you will join us on this new and rewarding learning experience. We'll try to make the experience fun by giving you some games and exercises to complete along the way. You will also have opportunities to connect with other online learners from around the world.
My name is Robin Turner, and I'm a Senior Language Specialist at the University of Pennsylvania's English Language Programs. I have a BA in English and a Master's in TESOL.
And my name is Brian McManus, and I am a Language Specialist at the University of Pennsylvania's English Language Programs. I have a BA in Film and Theatre Studies and a Master's in TESOL.
Throughout both of our careers, we've helped students with the job application process. We've been on both sides of the application process, as interviewers and job applicants. We're really excited to be able to help you too. So welcome, and let's get started.
In this video, we will introduce you to the structure and goals of this course. English for Career Development has 5 units.
Unit 1, Entering the Job Market.
Unit 2, Resumes.
Unit 3, Writing a Cover Letter.
Unit 4, Networking.
Unit 5, Interviewing for a Job.
Throughout the course, you will learn and practice new vocabulary when you read articles, listen to recordings, watch videos, play games, and complete assessments. Each unit has specific language and content goals.
We will give you a quick overview of each unit. Don't worry if some of the words and concepts are new to you. We will explain everything more clearly in the rest of the course.
In Unit 1, Entering the Job Market, we will review how people begin looking for a job in the United States. Our language goals will focus on present tense verbs and compare and contrast structures. Our content goals will help you identify your skills and interests and read job advertisements.
In Unit 2, Resumes, we will tell you about the application process. This begins with a written summary of your job experience, education, and skills, known as a resume. Our language goals are using action verbs and keywords. The content is an explanation of the parts of the resume and the specific information that is included in resumes.
In Unit 3, Writing a Cover Letter, we want to introduce you to format letter writing in the job application process. Our language goals are past tense verbs and using modal verbs for politeness. The content will include professional letter writing format and important parts of the letter.
In Unit 4, Networking, we begin to explore the speaking skills that you will need to introduce yourself in a professional setting. Our language goals are using stress, rhythm, and intonation to make your speaking clearer. Our content goals are to make small talk and describe your skills effectively.
In Unit 5, Interviewing for a Job, we will discuss how to ask and answer questions effectively in a job interview. Our language goals are answering typical interview questions and asking clarification questions. Our content goals include job interview style, behavior, and expectations.
Reading and listening assignments are required throughout the course, and each unit has 1 or 2 assessments designed to help you practice both language and content at the same time. We are delighted to join you in improving your communication skills for your career development.
Before we begin, watch the next video to learn how to have your best course experience and enjoy our exciting Coursera community.
Hello! In this video, we will talk about the job search process and introduce you to each of the 7 steps in the process. Did you know that the average U.S. worker today holds 10 different jobs before age 40? For younger workers just beginning their careers, that number is between 12 and 15 jobs. This means that workers in the United States and around the world will probably change jobs often. Each time they change jobs, they have to take part in the process known as the job search. Searching for a job is part of career development. It's important to remember that searching for a job is part of a process which takes time and requires several steps. Let's think about the search as a journey on a train. The train will stop at many places along the way to its final destination, just as job seekers complete multiple steps in their job search. In the first step, job seekers need to identify their skills and areas of interest. When looking for a job, you should ask yourself, what am I good at? What do I like to do? What have I studied? Your answers to these questions will help you to create a clear professional profile. In the second step, you create a professional profile. You write information about your education, your past work experience, volunteer experiences, or special training. Your professional profile can also list hobbies and interests that tell more about you as a person. After reflecting on skills and creating a profile, it's time to start looking for a job. There are many places to search for jobs online, in newspapers, and in person. In the third step, job seekers will need to read and understand the advertisement or job description. Then decide if their skills match the job description. In the fourth and fifth steps, the job seeker moves into the application part of the process. In this part of the process, Job seekers send their information to the employer to apply for a job. In the United States, a person will send a resume and cover letter to formally apply for a job. A resume is a written document of one's employment, education, and skills. The cover letter is a formal letter addressed to the employer to introduce the job seeker, show qualifications, and ask for an interview. In addition to cover letters, many people use networking events as a way to introduce themselves to future employers. This is the 6th step in the process. When networking, job seekers talk to many people about their skills and experience in conversations. Networking is focused on meeting people and building relationships in person. Whether it is through a cover letter or a short conversation, job seekers are trying to get an interview for a job. As the 7th step, the job interview is the best chance for the candidates to show their interest in the job and demonstrate to employers how they are qualified for the job. Formal interviews are often in person, but can sometimes be done by telephone or video. In all of these interviews, the job seeker needs to be able to ask and answer questions briefly and clearly. Let's review the job search process. Job seekers begin by identifying their skills and interests, create a professional profile, and read job descriptions. After choosing a job, they write a resume and cover letter to formally apply and request an interview. Job seekers often talk to many people casually in networking events. In a formal job interview, candidates really present their skills to a future employer. Now, let's move on to identifying skills and interests.
Hello. In this video, we will talk about how to make a list of your interests and skills. Then we will talk about 3 types of skills: things you do, things you know, and ways you act. Knowing your interests and skills helps you to choose a career that is best for you. Let's begin with a definition of interests and skills. Interests are subjects, ideas, or things you want to know more about. Interests can also be an activity or hobby that you enjoy doing in your free time. For example, if you like to play computer games, cook, or read books, you could say those are interests or hobbies. What are your interests or hobbies? Write 2 lists on 1 page. The left side with subjects or things that you like learning about, and the right side a list of things that you enjoy doing. When making these lists, think about yourself as a person, not just a worker. Let's look at this with an example job seeker, John. One of his interests is reading internet news articles about computer programming. He should write that in the left side of the paper. John also enjoys playing online computer games, so he should put that on the right side of the paper. When you write all of the things that you are interested in, you may notice that they are related or connected in some way. Many career coaches say that knowing your interests or hobbies often helps you to identify your skills. So, what exactly are skills, and how are they different from interests? First, a skill is the ability to do something well. Some skills are natural, meaning that we are born with these skills. Other skills are learned, and we develop these skills over time. Skills can also be divided into more categories. Functional skills are things you can do, like driving. Subject skills are things you know, for example, Japanese history. And personal trait skills are ways that you act, such as being on time. For example, let's look at John's skills. We know that John likes to read about computer programming and play online computer games. When he plays games online, he is able to watch the screen and type quickly at the same time. John is also very good in all of his math classes, and he asks many questions. So we can say that he has strong math skills and he is curious. Using this example, we can see that John has functional skills, typing quickly, subject skills, math, and personal trait skills, curiosity. Now that John knows his interests and skills, he might begin looking for jobs that are related to technology or computer programming. Like John, once other job seekers identify their interests and skills, they are more likely to choose a job or career path that is best for them. Let's review what we've learned about interests and skills. Interests are things we want to know about or activities that we like. Skills are the ability, natural or learned, to do things well. Our skills are often divided by functional skills, things you do, subject skills, things you know, and personal trait skills, ways that you act. Next, you will read more about these types of skills in the reading, What You Offer the World.
Hello! In this video, we're going to talk about some useful words and phrases that you'll hear many times throughout the job search process. We will organize these words into 3 categories: things, actions, and people. Let's begin with some important definitions of things or general concepts: occupation and career. An occupation is like a job because both are very specific. For example, being a waiter is a job or occupation. If Tom works as a waiter, a bartender, and a restaurant manager over 20 years, he can say that he has a career in the restaurant industry. An occupation is a person's work as a way to earn money. A career is an occupation or profession that requires special training and continues over a long period of time. Here's another example. Yuki has worked for the clothing company Uniqlo for 10 years. She began her career in the fashion industry with different occupations, first as a sales clerk, then as a store manager. Now she works at the company's main office as a fashion designer. Let's look at 2 more definitions of things. Employment is a general term for the activity that people do to make money. When someone asks you about your employment history, focus on work for which you were paid money. A job application is a written request for employment, usually a specific document to be completed. In the job search process, there are some actions or verbs that are very important. Let's look at 5 of these. The first is to search for a job. This means to look for work in a specific occupation. To apply for a job is to formally ask for employment, usually in writing. This means completing a specific job application or sending documents like a resume and cover letter. We will talk more about these later in Units 2 and 3. To interview for a job is to answer questions in a formal meeting. Most interviews are face-to-face, but sometimes people can interview by phone or video calls. To be hired for a job is to be given a job and then paid for the work. If someone says, "You're hired," that means you got the job. To work is to do an activity related to one's occupation. Now, let's move on to people. A job seeker is someone who is looking for a job. After a person applies for a job, they become a candidate or an applicant, which is a person who might get the job. These next two words sound almost the same, but have very different meanings. Pay attention to the ending sounds of these two words, employer and employee. An employer is the person making the decision to give the applicant a job. The employer can be a specific person or can also be a company or organization. When a candidate is hired and begins working, he is then called an employee. Employee is a more formal word for worker. By now, you probably noticed that many of these new vocabulary words look similar, but they are actually different word forms, nouns and verbs. One way to help remember all of these new words is to organize them into 3 categories. Things are nouns, actions are verbs, and people are nouns. Let's move on to a game where you can practice grouping the words into the correct category: things, actions, or people.
Hello. In this video, we are going to talk about how your interests and skills are related to different types of jobs. There are 6 types of interests that are related to certain kinds of careers. Many job seekers have interests in more than one category. This helps them because they have a larger list of work-related skills. The first category is for people who have an interest in doing things. These people like to work with their hands, use tools, and be physically active. They like to move around a lot. Some jobs that might be good for these people include working in a restaurant, construction, or farming. The second type of interest is related to thinking. These people like to work independently. They like analyzing information, solving puzzles, and figuring out problems. Some jobs that would be very good for these people are in a lab research or accounting. The third type of interest is related to creating. People who like to come up with new ideas and like fewer rules are called creative. Some jobs that are good for them include graphic design, fashion design, or maybe even performing arts, actors or musicians. The fourth kind of interest is related to helping. These people like to work with people. They enjoy working in teams and organizing. Some jobs that are best for them include teaching, or healthcare jobs like doctors or nurses. The fifth area of interest is persuading. People who like persuading like to talk to others and sell products or ideas. Some jobs that are very persuasive include sales and marketing, and also business management. The sixth kind of interest is organizing. People who enjoy organizing like to make sure a project is clear, they like schedules and rules. Jobs that are good for people who like organizing include business administration, management, and also research. It's important to remember when you're choosing a job that's best for you, you should think about your interests and skills and then find the best job to match. Many different types of jobs use similar skills. For example, a person who likes to help others and likes to be active might want to be a teacher, a doctor, or a tour guide. These jobs are very different but use similar skills. To summarize, we learned about 6 types of interests and job-related skills that match those interests. We also learned about some of the best jobs to match those interests and skills. Now, you'll move on to the next step in the job search process to create your own professional profile.
Hello again. In this video, we're going to look at 2 verb tenses, the present simple and the present continuous. You will need these 2 tenses to talk about your job skills and to prepare you for the job search process. We will examine each of these tenses, when we use them, and practice their forms. So, let's begin by looking at the present simple. We use the present simple to say if something happens all the time or is a usual activity. For example, I am an English language instructor. I teach English. I live in the United States. I work at a university. You can see that I'm using the present simple because I'm speaking about things that happen all the time for me and are usual activities. What about you? What do you do? Are you a student? Do you work? Where do you work? You might answer, I'm a student, or I work at a clothing store, because these might be usual activities for you. Let's look at another example. This is Marco. Marco is a student at a university. 2 days a week, he also works in a doctor's office. He answers the phone, he writes emails, he speaks with patients. These are his usual activities. Okay, so how do we form the present simple? Well, it's not called the present simple for no reason. It's actually pretty simple to form. You take the base form of the verb, and that's it. For example, I teach English. Teach is the base form of the verb to teach. The only exception here is the third person singular. That's he, she, Marco, the teacher, or it. In this case, we add an S or an ES to the end of the base verb. For example, Jane works in a hospital. She teaches medical students. She likes her job. Next, let's look at the present continuous, or as it's sometimes called, the present progressive. This tense is used to speak about actions that are happening right now, or right about now. For example, right now, I'm speaking to you about the present continuous tense, and you are learning how to use it correctly. Notice in this sentence how I use the present continuous. I'm speaking and you are learning. I'm using the present continuous because this is something that I'm doing and you are doing right now. So, we use the present continuous to talk about an action that's happening right now. Remember Marco? Want to see what he's doing right now? Well, Marco is checking the calendar and making an appointment for a patient. We form the present continuous by using the verb be in the present form. That's am, are, or is, and then adding the base verb plus ing. For example, Marco is working in the doctor's office. He is typing an email. So, to sum up, if we compare these two tenses, we can see that the present simple is used to speak about actions that are happening all the time, or usually in the present. The present continuous is used to speak about actions happening right now. Now, why don't we look at an example where we use both of these tenses? Let's look at Marco again. Remember, he works at a doctor's office. He is also a part-time student. What's he doing now? He is getting ready to leave the office for the day. He's shutting down his computer, he's turning off the lights, and he's locking the office door. Bye, Marco. To sum up, in this video, we've looked at two tenses, the present simple and the present continuous. We use both verb tenses to talk about job skills and to prepare you for the job search process. We looked at each of the tenses' forms and usage. Now, let's do a game to practice those verb tenses some more.
Hi there. In this video, we're going to look at job descriptions. We will find out where we can look for them and what are some of the important parts we should look for when reading them. When you begin looking for a job, you're probably going to search for jobs in job advertisements. You will usually find these advertisements in newspapers and on internet job sites. So we will take a closer look at an example of this kind of advertisement and decide what you should look for when reading it. When you begin your job search, you might first look for jobs in a local newspaper where you live. In the United States, many newspapers are now online, and you can find many jobs there. There are also websites that focus only on jobs, like in the US, monster.com. Also, many larger companies have information on their websites about job openings. So you can go directly to the website of the company where you'd like to work. You will probably start by looking in one, some, or all of these places for a job. It is normal to try and narrow your job search to the field or area where you want to work or where you have training. For example, school teacher or office receptionist or truck driver or nurse. This way, you can match yourself with jobs that you are more likely prepared for, and therefore you will have a better chance of getting an interview. So when searching through job advertisements, look for job titles related to your area of training, experience, or interest. So now, let's look at some of the parts of a job advertisement. Say I am interested in helping people and I am an organized person. I want to work in an office environment with other people. I find this job advertisement for a client services coordinator and I wonder, am I qualified to apply for it? Qualified means having the minimum requirements to do a job. For example, in one job, this might mean you need to have a university degree. In another job, it might mean you have to have a license or a certification in a particular area, like driving a truck or being a nurse. How do you know what qualifications are needed? Well, the advertisement should clearly say this. It may say qualifications or requirements. Let's look at this ad and see what qualifications are required. Can you see where the qualifications are? That's right. Under the title Requirements, there is a list of 6 things. Number 1 is a qualification. Number 2 is work experience. Numbers 3 through 6 are skills. Things that you are able to do like typing, good communication, and being organized. The next question I should ask is, what duties or responsibilities will I have to perform in this job? Duties and responsibilities are tasks that I do regularly in a job. Can you see what these are in this job advertisement? Let's take a look again and see. In this job, the responsibilities are listed in the opening paragraph. They include greeting clients, answering telephones, performing other clerical functions. The word clerical means relating to working in an office. If this job still seems like one I can do because I'm qualified and I can perform the duties and responsibilities well, then what do I need to do to apply for the job? Apply means to put yourself forward formally for a job. Let's take one final look at the job advertisement and look for this information. Can you find it? That's right. At the bottom it says, fax or email your resume to Pablo Cavero, and it gives his fax number and email address. So, if I want to apply for this position, I will send him my resume along with a cover letter. In Units 2 and 3, we'll help you prepare these 2 important things. So, in this video, we've talked about where you can find a job advertisement, what are the most important parts of a job advertisement, and how can we apply for a job we are interested and qualified for. Next, we'll play a game to help us practice some of the vocabulary we've looked at in this video.
Hello! In this video, we're going to talk about ways to compare different things in speaking. In English, we use certain phrases to discuss things that are similar or different. We often use these phrases as a way to describe 2 or more people, places, experiences, or things. Let's begin by talking about phrases used to compare 2 things. To compare things is to talk about ways 2 things are the same. Here are some examples of phrases to compare the similarities of two jobs and two places for job training. We'll look at an example first, talk about the grammar structure, and then use it in another example. Phrase number 1 are similar because. Doctors and teachers are similar because they work with people. The two nouns being compared are doctors and teachers in green. Then you see the phrase are similar because in purple, followed by the independent clause, they work with people. An independent clause is a complete sentence that has a subject and a verb. In this example, the independent clause has a subject, they, and a verb, work. Here is another example comparing two places for education, community colleges and universities. Using the same structure, the sentence would look like this. Community colleges and universities are similar because they offer courses in sciences and humanities. Notice that the independent clause in red has a subject, they, and a verb, offer. Phrase number 2, have something in common. Doctors and teachers have skills and interests in common. Again, the two nouns being compared are doctors and teachers in green. Then you see the phrase have blank in common in purple. The nouns skills and interests go in the middle of the phrase. It is important to note that you must use at least one noun in the middle of this phrase. Here's another example of the phrase have in common. Community colleges and universities have science and humanities courses in common. Phrase number 3, both and. Both doctors and teachers work with people to help them. This sentence begins with the word both in purple, followed by the two nouns in green, and the verb phrase for more explanation. The verb phrase is very important because it explains how the two things are similar. Here's another example using the phrase both and. Both universities and community colleges offer courses in sciences and humanities. So, let's review the 3 phrases to compare people, places, experiences, or things. 1, are similar because. 2, have something in common. And 3, both and. Remember that speakers use these phrases to make their ideas clearer and to explain how two things are similar. In the next video, we will look at some phrases to contrast the differences between two things.
Hello. In this video, we're going to talk about ways to contrast different things in speaking. We use certain phrases to discuss things that are similar or different. We often use these phrases as a way to explain the differences between two or more people, places, experiences, or things. Let's look at 3 phrases used to contrast two things. To contrast things is to talk about how they are different. For example, to show how doctors and teachers are different, we might say, phrase number 1, are different because. Doctors and teachers are different because they each need a special degree. The two nouns being contrasted are doctors and teachers in green. Then you see the phrase are different because in purple, followed by the independent clause, they each need a special degree. Remember that an independent clause is a complete sentence with a subject, they, and a verb, need. Here is another example contrasting community colleges and universities. Community colleges and universities are different because they offer different types of degrees. Phrase number 2 is unlike. Unlike doctors, many teachers complete their university degree in 4 years. This sentence begins with the phrase of contrast unlike in purple, followed by the first noun doctors in green. Then the second noun is said with a verb phrase for more explanation of how the two things are different. Here's another example using unlike. Unlike community colleges, universities offer master's degrees and doctoral degrees. Phrase number 3 is using but or whereas. Doctors may take 10 years to finish their education, but teachers finish in 4 to 6 years. In this sentence, each noun in green is part of an independent clause that explains how the two things are different. The word but or whereas goes in the middle of the sentence and shows that there is a difference. But is more commonly used in casual speaking. Whereas has the same meaning, it just sounds more formal. Community colleges offer associate's degrees, whereas universities offer bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. Using whereas makes this sentence sound more formal. Let's review the 3 phrases to contrast people, places, experiences, or things. 1. Are different because. 2. Unlike. 3. But or whereas. To summarize, there are certain phrases to compare and contrast how things are similar and different. Often, speakers use these phrases to make their ideas clearer. Now, you will go on to listen to a news report about how job seekers are using the internet and social media websites to search for jobs. As you listen, think about how internet job searching is the same or different in your home country.
As far as I understand, in the United States, maybe you will start searching for a job using social media websites. And I think the very first step in Chile will be to contact friends or relatives that might be in your same field of work. Like, for example, I have many friends that are nurses too, so if I were looking for a job, I will ask them if they know about some opportunities that they might be around. We also use social media websites, and they might post this salary that they are offering. I think maybe this is something different to what you do here in the US, and even in contrast of what you can do here, You can put your salary expectations on your CV.
We here at the University of Pennsylvania's English language programs hope that you're enjoying your course. Here are some other ways to improve your English language learning with us. You could enroll in a program for improving your business communication, exploring your leadership style, or expanding your career opportunities. We look forward to continuing to learn together with you. Follow this URL to learn more about exciting online learning options. See you there!
Hello! In this unit, we will be talking about resumes and how to write an effective resume. In this video, we will start by defining the resume and talk about 3 reasons why job seekers need a resume. In later videos, we will take you through each part of the resume and how to write a clear and organized resume. At the end of this unit, you will write your own resume to describe your work experience, education, and skills. Let's get started with a definition. What is a resume? A resume is a written document of work experience, education, and skills. Resumes are usually only 1 or 2 pages long and give a short but detailed description of your past job duties and experiences. Employers often need to read many resumes, so they look for keywords or phrases to decide if they should interview the candidate or not. Why do you need a resume? Because there's a lot of competition in the job market. Job seekers need to create a resume that really shows their qualifications to an employer. A great resume is really important for 3 main reasons. First, a great resume will get the attention of the employers and show why you are a good match for the job. Employers will read many resumes from many different applicants, so you need to make sure that your resume clearly stands out to get the attention of the employer. Remember that your qualifications should match the job advertisement. If the company is looking for someone with 5 years of sales experience, you should have 5 years or more of sales experience, and say that clearly in your resume. The second reason you need a great resume is that it communicates your strongest skills and accomplishments to a future employer. Your resume should highlight the skills that employers often look for, such as technology skills and communication skills. Your resume should also include professional accomplishments or activities. For example, if you wrote a book that was published, you should put that in your resume. The third and most important reason you need a great resume is that it gets you an interview. Your resume is your first chance to get the employer's attention. Job seekers want to leave the reader with a positive first impression or a good feeling. If the employer likes what they read, they will contact you to interview for the job. The interview is your chance to meet the employer in person and give more details about your qualifications. In summary, a resume is an important document that describes your work experience, education, and skills. There are 3 reasons why you need a great resume: to get the employer's attention and show you're a good match, to communicate your skills and accomplishments, and to get an interview. In the next video, we will talk about the parts of a resume.
Hello. In this video, we are going to look at the resume in more detail and break it down into its different parts. We will also discover what key things you need to include in a resume. Let's begin by looking at a sample one-page resume. Some resumes are much longer than one page, but for our purposes, we are going to stick with a one-page version. In this sample, I hope you can see how the writer has used lots of white space, bullet points, and a limited number of fonts, so the resume is much easier to read. Let's look at a resume that doesn't have these things. Which resume would you prefer to read? That's right, the first one. Put yourself in the shoes of a possible employer who might read lots of resumes each day. Which one do you think the employer will prefer reading? So the lesson here is make your resume easy to read. Don't give a future employer an excuse to ignore your resume or throw it in the trash. So what can you do to prevent this from happening? Well, the first thing you can do is make sure that your resume has each of the following key parts. What are these parts? Well, the first one is your name and contact details. If an employer wants to contact you to ask you to come for an interview, here is where they will find your full name and information about how they can communicate with you, like your email address or telephone number. The next part of your resume is the headline and summary. This section is where you should write the job you are looking for and then include a summary of the skills you have. So, if we look at the sample resume again, you will see that this person includes the job title Project Coordinator and then gives a short summary of her work experience and key skills. The third part of the resume you need to include is work experience. Here, you can list the jobs you have worked at in the past, including your current job, if you have one. Current job means what job you have now. Be sure to list your work experience in reverse chronological order. In other words, list your most recent job first, the one before that next, and so on into the past. If we look at the sample resume, we can see this person listed her job from 2005 to the present first, and then lists her job from 2001 to 2005 after this. The final part of the resume that you need to include is education. Here you should include any high school or college degrees you received and the year you received them. If we look at the sample resume one more time, can you see what education Beth Smith received? She includes her associate's degree from Northeast Wisconsin Technical College in 2001. If you have more than one qualification, list them in reverse chronological order, similar to your work experience. So, you should begin with your most recent degree first, and then the one before that after. So, in conclusion, in this video, we have done a short overview of the different key parts of a resume. In the remainder of this unit, we will look at each of these parts in more detail. Next, we will have a reading on the basic elements of a resume, followed by a check your understanding exercise and a game.
Hello! In this video, We're going to discuss the first part of a resume, your name and contact information. We will talk about what to include and where to put this information in your resume. It probably seems very easy, but there's a specific format or order for this information in a resume. Job seekers should follow the standard format to make a professional impression from the beginning of the resume. To begin, your resume needs to clearly show your full name. This means that you write your given name first, followed by your family name. If you have a middle name, you can write it out completely or just use the first letter. For example, Sally Ann Smith could write her name two ways, Sally Ann Smith or Sally A. Smith. Most people include their first name, middle initial, and family name only. Often, job seekers will make their name a larger size or font than the rest of the words. This helps the employer or the reader to find the name very quickly. It is also common to put the name in the center at the top of the page. Another way to make the name stand out is to write it in bold letters, which are darker than the other letters. The next part is for job seekers to write their contact information, which means their current postal address, email address, and telephone number. The postal address is your official location where an employer can send you information. Your postal address is your house number, street name, city, state or province, country, and postal code or number. For example, here is Sally Smith's postal address, 100 Main Street, Los Angeles, California, 90210, USA. Your email address should be professional and contain your full name or at least a part of your name. For example, Sally Smith's email could look like this, sallysmith@email.com or smith@email.com. It is easier for a possible employer to contact you if your email address is similar to your name. For instance, flowergirl123@email.com does not appear to be professional or make it easy for the employer to remember Sally's name. For telephone number, you should include at least one number for an employer to call you for an interview. Sometimes job seekers provide a mobile number and a home telephone number. Here's an example of Sally's phone numbers. Her home phone number is 610-555-1212. Her mobile phone number is 610-232-5551. Giving more than one number makes it easier for an employer to contact you for an interview. Let's review Sally's name and contact information. If she writes her name in the top center of the page, she can put the rest of the information directly below it to look like this. In summary, we reviewed the first part of your resume, name and contact information. You now know to write your full name and include your postal address, email address, and telephone number. Next, you will watch a video about connecting employers with job seekers in today's economy, and then complete a short listening quiz.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. About 350,000 newly unemployed people signed up for financial assistance in the United States during the first week of July. The nation's jobless rate was 8.2% in both May and June. Some employers say they would add employees if they could find workers with important technology skills. Some experts say better communication and technology could reduce this skills gap. Angel Gurria is head of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. He says even some well-educated people are having trouble finding work around the world. He says it is a tragedy that there are unemployed graduates while employers cannot find people with the skills they need. OECD officials say more than 44 million people are unemployed in the 34 wealthiest nations belonging to the organization. In the United States alone, nearly 13 million people are unemployed, but the country also has more than 3.6 million unfilled jobs. Experts say some positions are unfilled because those seeking work lack high technology skills. A company called Monster Worldwide is using some new technology it says can help solve that problem. Company official Earl Renison says computer programs called semantic search are able to process huge amounts of information. That includes millions of resumes to help connect skilled people with open jobs. Earl Renison says semantic search is designed to choose the right match from the words or expressions around a keyword. He says this helps it get the right match, even if a job posting, resume, or other documents use different words to express the same idea. He says better searches will lead to better matches and fill more jobs. Rich Milgram is head of a recruitment company called Beyond.com. He says another problem is that the people who are experts at finding just the right workers were the first ones out of work during the recession. He also says it will take time for companies to rebuild their workforces, even if they have added new recruiters. The new recruiters do not understand the business that well because they are new, says Rich Milgram. They do not have a relationship with the hiring managers. Rich Milgram says companies in need of excellent workers have to do a good job of writing job advertisements that are understandable, and job seekers need to make it clear to hiring managers how they can help their companies. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
Hello again. In this video, we are going to look at using keywords in your resume. We will discover their importance when writing a resume. We will also look at some examples of keywords in both job descriptions and resumes. To begin, let's explain what keywords are. Employers use keywords when describing a job to an applicant. They describe the kinds of things they are looking for in a successful applicant. Do you remember the job advertisement from Unit 1? Let's look at it again. The keywords used here are related to the job being advertised. These include greeting clients, excellent organizational skills, good communication skills. Now, after reading this job advertisement, it is really important when applying to this position, you refer to these keywords in your resume and your cover letter. Why is this important? Well, because the employer who reads your resume and cover letter will be looking for these keywords to decide if you have the key skills and qualifications to do the job. Nowadays, many employers are using computer software to search through resumes looking for keywords. Without these keywords, these employers are not likely to invite you to an interview. Instead, your resume may go into the recycling can. And we don't want that to happen, do we? So, what can you do to avoid this from happening? Well, as I said, it's vital that you include some of these keywords from the job advertisement in your resume and cover letter. So let's see how we can do that right away. This is Yelena Hernandez's resume. She is applying for the Clients Services Coordinator position we just looked at. Has Yelena used any of the keywords from the job advertisement in her resume? What do you think? In the summary section, she says, very organized, lots of experience working in a busy working environment, proficient in typing and Microsoft Office software. All these terms refer to the keywords in the job advertisement. So, Yelena is doing a great job here using keywords in her resume. In conclusion, in this video, we looked at keywords and examined how it's really important to include these in your resume. Using these keywords will help you to get noticed by employers and give you a better chance of getting called for an interview. Next, we'll look at a reading on using keywords effectively.
Hello! In this video, we're going to look at the headline and summary section of your resume. We'll look at what information you need to include here and prepare you to write your own headline and summary. In the past, people wrote an objective in their resume. This objective described what the candidate was looking for in a job. However, nowadays, it is more popular to use a headline instead of an objective. Can you see what the headline in this resume is? That's right. In this case, it's Project Coordinator, someone who manages or is in charge of a piece of work. The headline is a phrase that highlights your value as a candidate for the position you're applying for. It is often the job title, which you want. It should be short and specific. Avoid making it too general. Again, refer back to the job advertisement and search the keywords there for help with this. The next part is the summary. The summary is a short paragraph where you can list your strengths and experience making you a better candidate. Often, the summary is followed by a series of bullet points listing your key skills. If we look at Abdul's resume again, we can see he has included both a summary paragraph and a bullet point list of his skills. Now, let's take a closer look at each of these things. In the summary section, Abdul has highlighted his strengths and experience. He says, highly motivated, 5 years experience in a fast-paced consulting environment, exceptional analytical ability, talent for managing information, certified associate in project management, CAPM certification. These are all things he wants the employer who reads his resume to see and then say, "This Abdul guy is a great fit for my project coordinator position." Abdul then goes on to list some of his key skills. As we learned in our lesson about keywords, these skills should try to relate to the keywords in the job advertisement. The first set of skills he lists, the ones on the left, are related to project coordination or management. After all, he's applying for a project coordinator position. These include project coordination, setup and monitoring, and communication. The second set of skills, the ones on the right, are related to Microsoft software programs, such as SharePoint, Project, and Excel. Overall, as you can see, Abdul makes a good first impression with the employer by writing a short and specific headline, a clear summary of his strengths and experience, and a bullet point list of his key skills. All these are directly connected to the job advertisement for the job he's applying to, and uses key words from that ad. In this video, I hope you have learned the importance of using a headline and a summary in your resume. Next, we will look at another important part of your resume, work experience. Bye for now.
Hello. In this video, we will show you how to complete part 3 of a resume, work experience. In this part of the resume, job seekers list job titles, their current and former employer names, locations, dates of employment, and a brief description of the job duties they had. Some job seekers call this part experience, so that they can include volunteer work, in addition to paid jobs. No matter what you call it, this section of your resume is the part that future employers focus on most to decide if a candidate is a good match for the position. It is important that job seekers are honest in the description of their duties because hiring officials often check with past employers. Because a resume is only 1 or 2 pages long, it may not be possible to list all of your experiences. You will need to choose the ones that best show your skills for the job. Job seekers list their experience in reverse chronological order. This means they start with their current or most recent job, then the list continues backwards by time order. Each entry is separate, but contains all of the following information: job title, employer name, location, dates of employment, and a brief description of the job duties. Here is Tomoko's resume and description of her experience. As you can see, she listed 3 separate experiences, one of which is a volunteer job. Look at the first experience. On one line, she lists the job title, office assistant, then the employer and the location together, University of California English Language Programs, followed by the years of employment, 2009 to present. The next lines are verb phrases that clearly describe what she does or did. Notice the use of present tense verbs, because this is her current job. You should also notice that the verbs used are called action verbs because they clearly explain what a person is doing. Her verb choices manage, develop, and train are actions that also show some of her skills as an employee. From this list, an employer would learn that she has computer skills and she can work well with a lot of other people. We will learn more about action verbs in video 8. When describing experience, many job seekers use a bullet list of 3 to 5 lines. There is no punctuation at the end because these are not complete sentences. It is important to be as clear and detailed as possible, but in a small amount of space. Remember that employers want to know how you are different from other candidates. Think about what you have done well in past experiences and include those details with strong verbs. For example, did you make your company more efficient or organized? For example, look at Tomoko's second experience as a program assistant. You can see that she has arranged special events and organized the office to be more efficient. These actions show the reader that she is well organized. This is an example of personal trait skill that is valuable to many employers. Let's review what you should include in Part 3 work experience. Begin with your current or most recent job and continue to list experiences backwards in time order. For each experience that you include, write the job title, the employer name, location, date of employment, and a brief description of the job duties. Next, you can practice organizing a resume with a game, ordering the chronology.
Hello! In this video, we'll be talking about the fourth part of a resume, education. This part of the resume is very important for current students, recent university graduates, or people with little work experience. For people with a lot of work experience, the education section shows that they meet the required education level. Job advertisements usually have a required degree as part of the qualifications for the job. Job seekers list each educational experience they have had and include the name of the school, the location, the degree received, major or subject of specialty, and the year of graduation. Those who received high grades or special honors during their education sometimes include those awards in this section. The development of the education part of the resume often shows future employers your academic performance, management and technical abilities, and general areas of interest. There are many kinds of degrees that are included in the education section. The most common types of degrees in the United States are 1. AA or AAS, which is Associate of Arts or Associate of Applied Science. These are 2-year degrees from community colleges and technical schools. 2 is BA or BS, Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. These are typically 4-year degrees from a college or university. 3, MA or MS, Master of Arts or Master of Science. These are graduate level degrees from a university. Number 4 is MBA, Master of Business Administration. This is a graduate degree in business from a university. And 5 is PhD, A doctorate degree is the highest level degree from a university. Like the work experience section of a resume, job seekers list their educational history in reverse chronological order, beginning with the most recent or current degree program. Here is an example job seeker, Michael Johnson, who attended one university and earned 2 degrees. Notice how he begins with the name of the school and the location, that's city and state. In this example, he attended Cornell University in the city of Ithaca in the state of New York. On the next line, he lists his most recent degree, an MBA in General Management, which he completed in 2015. This is a graduate-level master's degree in business administration with a special focus or major in general management. Next, he lists his BA in sociology, which he completed in 2009. His Bachelor of Arts degree is a 4-year degree in sociology is the subject area that he studied most. After listing the degrees, Michael includes an award that he earned in 2008 and 2009. In United States universities, Dean's List awards go to students who received very high grades at the end of the academic year. Many people put this information in their resume to show that they were very successful in their courses. Let's review part 4 of the resume, education. In this section, job seekers show each educational experience separately in reverse chronological order. Each entry must include the name of the school, the location, the degree received, major or subject area, and the year of graduation. The addition of awards or honors is not required, but does provide good information about a future employee. Job seekers include all of their education to show that they meet the required education level for the position. Being very successful in one's education often means that a job seeker is serious and a hard worker. Now, we will move on to the next video, which will help you to learn how to use action verbs to describe your experience very clearly.
Hi again. In this video, we are going to look at what we call action verbs. These are verbs that you should use throughout your resume so you are a more attractive candidate to an employer. We will look at some examples of these verbs and see how we can use them in your resume. We use action verbs in our resumes because they are more specific verbs. They tell the employer a lot about what you do or did in your jobs than general verbs do. For example, if I said, worked at X company or did sales at Y company, that doesn't really tell the employer very much. The verbs are too general or unspecific. However, if I change worked to developed a project at X company, where develop means to grow something, and I can change did to increased sales at Y company, where increase means to make bigger, now it sounds much better. I have a more active role rather than a passive one. I am more in control. Action verbs are usually grouped together by job or skill type. Since many jobs require you to have multiple skills, you will probably be choosing action verbs from different skill types. There are lots of action verbs to choose from, but for our purposes today, we are going to look at a shorter list. As I mentioned earlier, if we choose the verb do or make, it is too general. But we could use a more specific verb like developed or increased. Likewise, I could say in my resume, I wrote a proposal, where proposal means a plan. However, what if I use a more specific verb such as drafted, which means to prepare an early version of a text? So now I write, I drafted a proposal, or I could say I edited a report, where the verb edit means to correct or change a written document. I could also use a general verb like talk, as in I talked with a customer, or I could use a more specific verb like I negotiated with a customer, where negotiate means to try to reach an agreement. Or I corresponded with a new customer, where the verb correspond means to write and respond to communication. I hope you can see how not only are my choice of verbs more specific, but they, more importantly, make my role in this job sound more active. In this video, we looked at action verbs and highlighted their importance when writing your resume. We talked about how using action verbs is much better than general verbs, as they make you sound a more skilled and accomplished worker. Next, we'll play a game to practice using action verbs.
Hello! In this final video of Unit 2, we'll talk about completing your resume. There are still some things you will need to do to make your resume the best resume you can write. One of these things has to do with presentation. In other words, how your resume looks. Is it easy to read? Does it look good? Does it follow standard resume rules? The next thing we'll discuss is proofreading and editing your resume. This means reading back over your resume after you have written it and making sure it doesn't have any mistakes. Finally, we'll talk briefly about the two most popular types of resumes, functional and chronological. After this video, we hope you will feel confident and ready to research and write your own resume. The assessment that follows this video will ask you to write your own resume and to read someone else's resume. To begin then, let's look at presentation. When an employer reads your resume, you want to be sure you make a great first impression. You can achieve this not only by having the skills, qualifications, and experience, but also making sure your resume looks professionally written and is easy to read. As we've said before, you don't want to give an employer an excuse to throw your resume in the recycling can. After all, an employer will probably read many other resumes before getting to yours. So if it doesn't follow what we call standard formatting, it will not make a good first impression. Some examples of standard formatting include using a standard font, for example, Times New Roman, using bullet points, using lots of white space to make the resume easier to read, using bold text and indents to give more importance to information and show relationships between information. If we look in this good example of a resume, we can see each of these things. Beth Smith uses only two fonts, Calibri and Arial. Bullet points to summarize her skills and work experience, lots of white space, and she uses bold text and indents. The next thing you need to do after you finish writing your resume is to read through it a few times or get someone else to read through it after you. You should read the resume looking for mistakes in grammar, spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. If you are unsure of the rules for each of these things, ask someone who's an expert or read a reliable book or website that explains the rules correctly. Make any necessary changes so that your resume is free of any mistakes. Nowadays, most employers ask you to send your resume by email or upload it to a job website. But if you're planning on sending the resume through the mail, be sure that you use a good quality paper. In the United States, you can buy cotton paper that is more expensive than regular printer paper, but it makes all the difference. A better quality paper will make your resume stand out from the crowd. Lastly, you should think about which type of resume you should use. There are two common types of resume used nowadays, functional and chronological. Chronological is the one most commonly used. It lists your work experience and qualifications in chronological order, starting with the most recent first. It is the one most people use when writing a resume. On the other hand, a functional resume puts more emphasis on your abilities and less on your work experience. If you have just graduated from high school or college and don't have a lot of work experience, you probably want to emphasize your education and qualifications and not your work experience. Or maybe you are just returning to the workforce after being away for an extended period of time. For example, because of illness or having a child. A functional resume may be a better fit for you in this case. We will examine functional and chronological resumes in more detail in the additional resources at the end of the unit. For the moment, we hope you've learned in this video the importance of good presentation, proofreading and editing your finished resume, and the basic differences between functional and chronological resumes. It's now time you put the finishing touches on your own resume. Be sure to carefully and thoroughly research the job you're applying to, and try to remember all the things we discussed in this unit. Good luck! Next, in Assessment 2, we're going to ask you to submit your resume, and another student in this course will read and review your work. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Hello. In this unit, we're going to introduce you to professional letter writing as the third part of the application process. In addition to a resume, job seekers include a cover letter as part of their application. There are three main reasons to write a cover letter. A written letter shows the applicant's personal style, explains the applicant's qualifications for the job, and formally asks for an interview. In later videos, we will take you through each part of the cover letter and how to write a clear and organized cover letter. At the end of this unit, you will write your own cover letter to apply for a specific job. To begin, a cover letter is a one-page formal letter, and there are some parts that look the same in each cover letter. In a later video, we will talk about professional letter format, or how it looks. However, the content or information in the cover letter should be a little different from each job you are applying for. The cover letter helps an employer to understand more about the applicant and helps to direct attention to certain parts of the resume. The first reason for writing a cover letter is that it shows the applicant's personal style or personality. Job seekers choose very specific words to introduce themselves to an employer. This is how they show their personal style. For example, Tom and Beth are both applying for the same job as an international student advisor. In his cover letter, Tom writes, "I am interested in working with international students." Beth writes, "I am very excited to meet and work with international students." The word choices in these examples show us their personal styles. We see that Tom is interested in working with international students, but Beth is very excited to meet and work with international students. Beth's personality is much clearer with her word choices, excited to meet and work with. The second reason for writing a cover letter is to explain the applicant's qualifications for the job. Using our same candidates, Tom and Beth, let's see how they would write a short description of their qualifications. Tom writes, "I have 2 years of experience working as an activities director of a language school." Beth says, "As a resident advisor, I advise students on counseling on personal, cultural, and immigration issues, as well as organize professional, social, and cultural programs." From the short descriptions in their cover letters, most employers would want to read Beth's resume to find out more about her experience. The third reason for writing a cover letter is to formally ask for an interview. There are different ways to make a request, as we will discuss in later videos. When applicants know the name and the contact information of the hiring manager, they may say that they will call at a certain time to arrange for an interview. For those who do not know who the hiring manager is, they should give their phone number or email address so the employer can contact them. To review, we now know the cover letter is the introduction to the applicant's personal style and gives a summary of the applicant's qualifications, which are explained in the resume. If employers like what they read in the cover letter, it is possible that the applicant will be invited for an interview. Next, go on to reading number 1, which shows 2 sample cover letters.
Hello! In this video, we will introduce the parts of a professional letter and format of a letter, or how it should look. In the United States, professional writing follows a standard format or order and includes 4 parts. The first part is the heading, which includes the writer's address and contact information, the date, and the reader's name and address. The second part is the salutation. The third part is the 3 body paragraphs: opening paragraph, middle paragraph, and closing paragraph. And the fourth is the closing, which includes a complimentary close, a signature, and a typed name. First, the heading of a letter begins with the writer's address and additional contact information, such as email address or phone number, in the top left corner. Notice how this job seeker, Beth Bradley, wrote her information here. The date follows the U.S. format of month, day, and then year. Don't forget the comma separates the 2 numbers. For example, Beth wrote this letter on April 26, 2016. The next part includes the full name and address of the reader. In this example, Beth is sending the letter to Jane Doe, who is the director of the Office of International Programs at the University of Texas. In addition to the first and last name of the reader, Beth also writes the title and the department, as Jane Doe is part of a large university. Since you may not know whether the reader is a man or a woman, it is acceptable to write the first and last name only, followed by the job title. Nowadays, many job applications are completed online, and job seekers may not know who the reader will be. In this case, it is acceptable to leave the name off of the reader's address and simply put the department and address of the organization. The second part of the letter is the salutation, or official greeting, and always begins with the word "Dear." Because this is a greeting, it is better to have a person's name. Following the word "Dear," Beth uses the person's full name and a colon. Beth knows the name of her reader, but if she didn't know, she could write "Dear Hiring Manager." Generally, the salutation is better if you have a person's name, but sometimes job advertisements do not provide the name of the employer. Next come the 3 body paragraphs of the letter. This is where you introduce yourself, explain your qualifications, and ask for an interview. We will discuss each paragraph in detail in later videos. The opening paragraph tells the reader that you are applying for a specific job. We will talk about different ways job seekers write this information in the next video. The middle paragraph is where job seekers explain their skills and how they are qualified for the specific job. We will look at examples and discuss how to write this paragraph in a later video. The last paragraph is important because the closing should make a positive impression of the candidate. We will talk about how to write the closing paragraph in a later video. The end of the letter includes a complimentary close, a signature, and the applicant's typed name. The complimentary close that is used most often is "Sincerely," followed by a comma. The signature is usually handwritten by the applicant, followed by the typed name. As for the format, All parts of the letter should be along the left side of the paper. The lines should be single-spaced with extra spaces between each of the parts. Writers should try to fit all of the parts onto one page. Let's review the parts of a professional letter. The heading includes the writer's address and contact information, the date, and the reader's name and address. The second part is the salutation. The third part includes the body paragraphs. The closing part of the letter includes a complimentary close, a signature, and a typed name. Next, go on to a game to practice matching the parts of the letter.
Hello. In this video, we will talk about ways to use your cover letter to introduce yourself to an employer. The first paragraph of a cover letter must include a statement of application, applying for a job, the specific title of the job opening, and your source of information. This is the part of the letter in which applicants show their interest in the position. Remember that the opening paragraph also needs to get the employer's attention. Let's look at an example job seeker, Beth, who is applying for a position as an international student advisor. In the opening paragraph of her cover letter, Beth starts by explaining that she read an article and the job advertisement in a newspaper, the Austin Times. She puts this information in the first sentence. After mentioning where she saw the advertisement, her second sentence gives a clear statement of application with the title of the job opening. In the last sentence of this paragraph, Beth highlights or focuses on her education and area of specialization. This is a short paragraph, but it tells an employer some important information about her. She knows about the student population, and her education makes her a good match for the position. There are many ways to write an opening paragraph. Each writer organizes and explains ideas differently with their own personal style. Let's look at another example from Reading 1, Tomoko's cover letter. Like Beth, Tomoko begins with the source of her information. She read about the job opening for an administrative assistant in the Seattle Times. Tomoko chooses a more indirect approach by saying that she read about a job opening and then gives the job title. The next sentence expresses her interest in the position because she shows that she understands the company's need and that she is qualified to help them. In her last sentence, she chooses to highlight her language skills, work experience, and office skills. Again, this is a short paragraph, but it tells the employer that the applicant knows something about the company and that she has skills to help the company. Job postings are not only found in newspapers nowadays. Sometimes job seekers mention the source of the information in the first sentence of the opening paragraph, especially if it is through a personal reference. If the source of information is a person or a website, the job applicant might write something like this. 1. At the XYZ regional conference, your colleague Johnny Quinn told me about the job opening for an executive assistant. 2. I am applying for the position of administrative assistant announced on the irongate.com website. In summary, we've looked at the opening paragraph of a cover letter. This paragraph serves as the introduction to the applicant and must include a statement of application, the specific title of the job opening, and the source of information. Some job seekers choose to briefly write about their education, skills, or experience at the end as a connection to the next paragraph. In the next video, we'll take a look at cover letter paragraph 2, highlighting your skills in the cover letter.
Hello! In this video, we will talk about ways to highlight your skills and qualifications in the cover letter. In paragraph 2 in the body of the cover letter, you will summarize 2 or 3 examples from your education, experience, and interests to show a future employer how you are qualified for the job. The examples that you choose will explain or support the information in your resume, not just repeat what is in your resume. This paragraph is your chance to really stand out from all the other applicants. Remember that employers are looking for people who can help their business or organization be successful. Focus on how your skills and qualifications will help them. When you are applying for a specific position, it is a good idea to use the job description or advertisement as a guide. The job description is very useful because it has keywords about the skills and experience needed to do the job. Our applicant, Beth, read a job description for an international student advisor with the keywords international students, 2 years of experience, and excellent communication skills. Using the sample cover letters from reading 1, let's look at how Beth focused on her skills in the second paragraph of her cover letter. In the beginning sentences, she writes about her current job as a resident advisor. She gives very specific information about the students she helps and the interpersonal and organizational skills she uses. In her first example, she explains that she works with 40 students, advises them, and organizes programs. The last 3 sentences of this paragraph focus on her experience as a student when she assisted with international student orientation and learned more about international cultures and communication. Now, let's see how Tomoko shows her skills and qualifications in the cover letter. She begins with her administrative skills and says that she has 10 years of experience with Microsoft Office, as well as several web-based programs. Her next example focuses on her language skills. She writes about her experience studying in Spain and her volunteer experience with people of diverse cultures. Tomoko ends the paragraph well by connecting those skills to the company's needs. The job posting says that they need an administrative assistant with strong computer skills and interpersonal skills. And Tomoko does a good job of explaining that she has those skills. As you can see, there are many ways for job seekers to focus on their skills and qualifications in paragraph 2 of the cover letter. Some choose to use 2 or 3 examples from their education, work experience, or their interests. In their descriptions, they are always trying to show future employers how they are qualified for the job. Now, let's move on to a game so you can practice matching the job description with skills and examples.
Hello. In this video, we will talk about ways to close or end the cover letter. In this paragraph, job seekers make a request to interview for the job, tell how they will follow up with the application, and leave the reader with a positive impression. These items can be written in any order. The goal of this paragraph is to summarize your interest in the job and show the employer that you are ready for the next step, a job interview. Although job seekers do not make the decision about the interview or schedule, they should plan to call or email the employer soon after sending the application. This shows that the applicant is serious about the job and may lead to an interview. Let's look at our example applicant in the United States, Beth, and see how she wrote the closing paragraph of her cover letter. She begins this paragraph by summarizing her experience and showing her interest in working at the University of Texas. She then leaves a positive impression by thanking the reader when she says, "Thank you for taking the time to review my resume." She also tells the reader that she plans to move to Austin at the end of May, and that she will be available for an interview at any time. This information is only necessary if you do not live in the same location as the employer. You can see that Beth continues making her positive impression with phrases like, "would be delighted to meet with you," and "I look forward to speaking with you soon." Because of her positive impression, her summary of qualifications and interest, Beth's closing paragraph is very effective. Let's look at another example with Tomoko's closing paragraph. Tomoko begins the paragraph with a very polite request for an interview by saying, "I would appreciate the opportunity to discuss my qualifications in an interview." Her request is very indirect or polite, but both applicants are clearly asking for a chance to meet the employer in person. In the next sentence, Tomoko says, "I will contact your office next week." We don't know if this will be a phone call or email, but she can do one or both. Like Beth, she also gives a specific time by saying next week. Tomoko also leaves a positive impression by thanking the reader and expressing her interest in meeting in person when she says, "Thank you for your consideration of my application, and I look forward to meeting with you." At the end of the cover letters, both job applicants add a complimentary close, "sincerely," followed by a comma, their signature or handwritten name, and then their typed names. Your signature shows your personal style, so be sure to write neatly and clearly so that the reader can understand your name. To summarize, we've learned how to end the cover letter with a closing paragraph that makes a request for an interview, tells the reader how you plan to follow up, and leaves the reader with a positive impression. We also learned about the complementary clause, signature, and the typed name. Now, let's move on to another video which talks about the present perfect and past tenses.
Hello! In this video, we're going to look at two tenses in English, simple past and present perfect. We will first examine one use of each tense and how we form them. When writing your cover letter, it is very important that you can understand how to use both tenses correctly. To begin, let's look at these sentences. They are taken from a sample cover letter. I have worked in my current job for the past 3 years. I began here in 2013. Before my current job, I studied in college for 4 years. In which of these sentences is the action complete or finished? In which of these sentences is the action still continuing to now? What do you think? That's right. The correct answer is, I began here in 2013 and I studied in college are complete or finished actions. I have worked in my current job for the past 3 years is still continuing. So we can see there is an important difference in use between these two tenses. Do you know what tense I began and I studied is? It's called the simple past. And do you know what tense I have worked is? It's called the present perfect. So, to sum up, we use the simple past tense to describe a complete or finished action in the past. We use the present perfect tense to describe an action that began in the past but continues to now. Now, let's look at how we form each of these two tenses. In the simple past, there are two types of verbs, regular and irregular verbs. I studied in college for 4 years is an example of a regular verb. In this case, we simply add ed or ied. If the verb ends in y, like study, add ied to the base form of the verb. So I studied, you studied, he studied, she studied, etc. I began here in 2013 is an example of an irregular verb. We call it irregular or not regular because its form changes from the present to the past tense in an irregular way. So, in the case of I began in 2013, the present form is I begin, as in I begin work each day at 9 a.m. These verbs do not follow a regular pattern like regular verbs do, so you should try and study the forms of each verb. Many English grammar books have a list of past tense irregular verbs. We usually use the simple past with a time phrase. Do you know what the time phrase is in this sentence? I began here in 2013. That's right, in 2013. Other examples of popular time phrases used with the simple past are ago, as in, I finished college 3 years ago. I began at my present job in 2013. Next, let's look at the present perfect. Like the simple past, there are regular and irregular verbs. In the example, I have worked in my current job for the past 3 years, the verb worked is a regular verb. We use the verb have or has plus what we call the past participle to form the present perfect. In this case, the past participle is worked. So we could say, I have worked, you have worked, he has worked, Mary has worked, etc. With regular verbs, the past participle will be the same as the simple past form. However, with irregular verbs, it will usually be different. Again, good English grammar books will list the past participle of irregular verbs. You should become familiar with them. The verb be is an example of an irregular verb. The simple past form is was or were, and the past participle is been. So we might say, I have been a receptionist for 6 years. Am I still a receptionist? Is Patricia a doctor now? The answer to both questions is yes. To sum up, we have discussed in this unit the simple past and the present perfect, 2 important tenses that you can use in your cover letter. We use the simple past to talk about complete or finished actions, and the present perfect to talk about actions that began in the past but are still continuing in the present. Next, we will play a game to practice these 2 tenses.
Hello. In this video, we're going to talk about the level of formality in your cover letter. We'll discuss why we need to think about formality as we write it and look at some of the differences between formal and informal tone or style in a cover letter. To begin, let's define what we mean by level of formality. In English, as in many other languages, we use different words and grammar forms depending on the situation we are communicating in. So, for example, if I am speaking with my close friend, I would probably use more informal language such as, "What's up, Tony?" or "How's it going? You going to watch the game tonight?" However, if I am speaking or writing to someone I don't know personally and the context is more professional, then I should choose a more formal style of language. Therefore, expressions such as, "What's up, Tony? How's it going?" could be incorrect or rude in that situation. If the person who reads my cover letter were to see such expressions, they might be surprised, shocked, or even offended by my level of informality. With this in mind, it is important that you use formal words or phrases in your cover letter. Nowadays, many employers request that you send your resume and cover letter by email rather than by traditional mail. However, just because you are writing your cover letter in an email does not mean you should write in an informal way, as if you are speaking with a friend or a family member. For example, how should you address the person you are writing to? Should you say, "Hi Mary," or "Hi Mr. Smith"? Both of these greetings or salutations are too informal. A more appropriate one is, "Dear Mr. Smith," if the person is a man, or Dear Miss Smith if the person is a woman. If you don't know the sex of the person you are addressing, then Dear Sir or Madam is a better choice. Likewise, in your closing, it would be interpreted as too informal if you were to write bye, or take care, or goodbye. A more formal alternative is sincerely or yours sincerely, and then you should follow this with your full name. In the body of your cover letter or email, try to avoid using informal language. It's best not to use contractions such as I'm, your, it's, etc. Use the longer forms, I am, you are, it is. While these things might seem small to you, they will contribute to the overall professional tone of your writing and help with creating a good first impression. Finally, let's look at an example of the opening of a cover letter. This one is written too informally. See what you think. Hi there, I saw your ad for a receptionist in the paper and I'm really interested in the job. Clearly, this is too informal. In the United States, this would not be acceptable, and an employer who reads it might interpret the writer as not being serious or professional enough for the job. So, the message is, always try and be professional in any communication with an employer. Here's the sample rewritten, so it's now more formal. Dear Miss Smith, I was very interested to read your advertisement for the position of receptionist in the Seattle Herald dated May 6, 2011. I would like to be considered for this job. In this video, we have looked at levels of formality in a cover letter and discussed the differences between formal and informal styles. I hope you can see that using a more formal style in your cover letter is what's expected from an employer. Next, we'll look at controlling tone with modal verbs.
Hello! In this video, we're going to talk about using modal verbs to be more polite. When applying for a job in the United States, it is important that job seekers are direct and honest, but also respectful and polite. Modal verbs help the writer to control the tone or feeling. This is how you will leave a positive impression on your reader. We will begin with the definition of modal verbs, the grammar structure, and the meaning or reasons why we use them. Then we will look at example sentences with and without modal verbs to show how the same message is given in different ways. Let's begin with a definition. Modal verbs are helping verbs, such as can, will, could, would, or might. These modal verbs show a speaker's attitude or feeling that something is possible or probable. Modal verbs are helping verbs that are immediately followed by the simple form of a verb. Could and would are very common modal verbs used in cover letters, emails, and conversations during the job search. When you use a modal verb in the sentence, it must be followed by another verb in the simple form. Look at this example. I could assist the company by working with international visitors. Now, let's talk about the meaning of can and will along with could and would. When a writer uses can or will, it is very direct. Can means that the writer has the ability to do something, and will shows that the writer is making a future promise or prediction. Could or would show that something is possible, probable, or very likely. These are more polite forms of can and will. Let's look at some examples from a cover letter. Number 1. I can assist your company in international markets. Number 2. I could assist your company in international markets. Number 1 just shows that the person has the ability, but number 2 is more polite and shows the possibility of using that ability to help the company. Here's another example with will and would. Number 1. I will assist your company in international markets. Number 2. I would assist your company in international markets. It is rude for him to say, I will assist your company in international markets, because only the employer gets to make that decision. If the applicant is too direct, it changes the tone or feeling of the message. Another meaning of the modal verb would is a polite form of want. Want is often too direct and can sometimes be rude. Would like is more indirect and polite. In a cover letter, applicants want to have a job interview, but need to politely say what they want. The way to do that is by saying, number 1, I would like to discuss the job in an interview. Or, number 2, I would like to learn more about the company in an interview. It is very important that job seekers communicate what they could or would do for a company, and then clearly say what they want the company to do for them, respectfully and politely. Let's review what we've learned about modal verbs. Using modal verbs in writing and speaking is the best way to be direct but also polite. Job seekers can control their tone and leave a positive impression. We now know that modal verbs would and could are used with other verbs to describe things that are possible or likely. We can also use would like to clearly show what we want in a polite and respectful way. Next, go on to a game to practice using modal verbs in polite language.
Hello. In this, the final video of Unit 3, we're going to talk about writing your cover letter for a specific job. We will prepare for the second assessment of this unit, where you will first write your own cover letter for a job. You will then read another student's cover letter and fill out a checklist while reading that person's cover letter. Typically, as we discussed in Unit 1, in the United States, you will find job advertisements in newspapers, job websites, or company websites. After finding a job you like and are qualified for, you will apply for that position. To apply, the employer will usually ask you to send a resume and a cover letter. After completing Unit 2, you should already have a resume. Now, after completing Unit 3, you should write a cover letter to accompany your resume. To help you write this cover letter, we're going to ask you to choose one of two options. Option 1 is to write a cover letter for this job advertisement for a client services coordinator. It's the same one we saw in Unit 1. Option 2 is to find a job advertisement by yourself and apply for that position, remembering to upload it along with your resume. This may be a great option for you if you are currently applying to jobs and have found a posting that you'd like to respond to. As you write your cover letter, try and remember all the things we have discussed in this unit in relation to writing a cover letter. Go back over the previous videos if that helps you and look at the other sample cover letters used in this unit as a guide when you write. Take your time doing this and, like when you wrote your resume in Unit 2, ask someone you trust to read through it a few times after you finish it to check it for spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Good luck with this. Next, in Assessment 2, you will complete your own cover letter, upload it, and then read someone else's cover letter. While you read through that person's cover letter, you will complete a checklist. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Hello, welcome to Unit 4. In this unit, we are going to focus on some of the speaking skills that are important for job seekers to develop. Networking is a big part of the job search process. We're going to talk about what networking is and why it is important in your career development. In later videos, we will focus on what to say and how to say it. Let's begin with some definitions. First, a network is a connection between many things or people. In career development, networking means connecting with other people to talk about your job search and career goals. You can talk to other people formally at a professional conference or informally at lunch with friends. When you are networking, you are meeting new people and learning more about different jobs and companies. Networking is about building professional relationships which take time to grow. When you meet new people, you learn about common interests or things you both know about. For example, two co-workers meet while working for a large financial company in New York. They quickly learn that they both went to the same university. This common background is the beginning of their professional relationship and may help them learn about some other things that they have in common, such as major or subject areas, work experiences, or other people they both know. These are called mutual friends or acquaintances. When you meet new people and discover common interests, they become a part of your professional network. There are many ways to increase or add to your professional network. First, you can join a professional organization, which is a group of people with similar occupations or careers. Second, you can use social media websites like LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Third, you can contact college alumni groups. Alumni groups are a connection of current and past students from the same university. Once you have a group of people, your network can be very important for your career because they might know about job openings that are not advertised. When some companies add jobs, they may not need to advertise online or in newspapers because they use their current employees to fill new positions. Let's look at an example of how networking really works. Jack is a manager at a large tech company, and he is looking for an additional web designer to add to the team. After he told his team, Marta remembered that her friend, Jin Soo, is a web designer and looking for a new job. Marta calls Jin Soo and recommends that he contact her manager, Jack, about the job. As a result of this network, Jin Soo learns about an unadvertised job, sends his resume and cover letter, and interviews for the job. After the interview, Jin Soo thanks Marta with a phone call or by sending her an email or a letter. In summary, we have learned that networking is connecting with other people to talk about job openings and career goals. We also learned how to increase your network by joining organizations and using social media websites. Remember that networking is about building professional relationships and can help you to learn about jobs that are not advertised online or in newspapers. Now, go on to read text 1, which has more information about networking during the job search.
Hello! In this video, we're going to discuss making small talk. We'll define what small talk is, give some examples of it, and explain how making small talk is relevant to networking and ultimately finding a job. So, to begin, let's define what small talk is. Small talk is when you make polite conversation with someone. Often the conversation is with someone you don't know very well. So you may have to speak with this person for the very first time. A conversation may begin as small talk and then continue into speaking about something more important. But usually, small talk is the first stage before you can get to that more important place. For example, let's say you are in a business meeting with your coworkers. You might begin the conversation with one of your colleagues by asking her about her family. You might say, "Hey Maria, how are you? How's your family doing? Did your youngest start school yet?" In this situation, the speaker asks a question about his coworker's family. Questions are a good way to get a conversation started. Usually, small talk sticks to topics that we consider safe. In the United States, chatting about someone's family is generally a safe topic. Chatting about the weather is a safe topic. Chatting about food or travel or movies are safe topics. Safe topics are ones where you can be pretty sure that you will not upset or offend the person by talking about these topics. In the US, we usually stay clear of certain topics, topics that we consider taboo or controversial, topics that could upset someone. Some examples of taboos in the US are religion, politics, and salary. It's best to avoid discussing these topics in a conversation, especially with someone you're trying to make a good impression with. So you would never say to a colleague in a conversation, "How much money do you make in your job?" Perhaps to help you make small talk, you should have a number of questions already prepared. That way, you're not tongue-tied or unable to speak when you meet someone. This brings up an important point regarding small talk or conversation in general. A lot of people are introverted or shy by nature. They feel uncomfortable talking about themselves, especially to strangers. This is a perfectly normal thing. However, if you have such a personality, you don't want this to stop you from having a conversation with someone who might possibly open a door to a future job. You will need to try and find a way to overcome this personality obstacle. In social situations, like meeting someone for the first time and feeling pressure to speak, asking questions is a good way to take the focus off you. If you have a number of questions already prepared, this will also help take some of the stress away in these uncomfortable situations. Beforehand, write down a number of the questions that you can use in these situations. Choose topics from the safe list we talked about earlier. Here are a couple examples. 1. How was your weekend? Did you do anything fun or interesting? 2. The weather forecast looks very nice for this coming weekend. Do you have any plans? Or 3. What restaurants would you recommend for lunch? These are just a few examples. Try these out a few times on a friend or a family member to see if they work and whether you need more practice. Select the ones you think work well and throw out the ones that don't. In this video, we've looked at the topic of small talk. We've examined some examples of it and discussed how it is relevant to networking. Next, we'll play a game with appropriate phrases from a conversation.
Hello. In this video, we will discuss what to say when you are networking. Job seekers often meet many people while they are searching for a job. We will discuss how to prepare and practice a networking elevator speech, which is a short description of skills and career goals. For many of us, it is easier to meet and talk to new people if we have prepared and practiced something to say about ourselves. Let's imagine that you just got on an elevator with a high-level manager in your company. After you greet each other, you want to tell the manager a little bit more about yourself. What would you say? Most people would say nothing and miss the chance to make a good impression on the manager. However, successful job seekers should have a prepared statement they can use to introduce themselves to another person quickly. This short description is known as an elevator speech. Because the average amount of time in an elevator is about 45 seconds. Even though the elevator speech is short, it should give enough information to make the listener know who you are and what you can do. Let's start with the basic information that you should include in your elevator speech. First, tell them your full name and current job title, department or employer. Second, tell the other person what you are looking for, information or a kind of job in an industry, field, or location. Third, tell them something about a past job or experience that could be important to them. Fourth, tell them about a job skill that you have and are very good at. After you have described a little bit about yourself, then you can ask the other person a general question. A general question is one that is easy to answer. For example, do you know if the company is hiring anyone right now? Asking questions helps to keep the conversation going and allows you to find out more about them. Let's see how an example job seeker, Amanda Smith, would introduce herself when networking. In this situation, Amanda is at a professional conference with many people in the auto industry, and she is talking with some people from Toyota. Here's an example of what she could say to introduce herself. First, she greets them with her name and gives her current job. Hello, I'm Amanda Smith, and I have been in sales for about 5 years. Second, she explains what she's looking for. I'm currently looking for a sales position in the auto industry. Third, she tells them about a current or past experience. One of the things I like most about sales is meeting and talking with new customers all the time. Fourth, she describes a job skill. I'm really good at listening to customers, and I am able to understand what they really want. Lastly, she asks a general question. Do you know if Toyota is hiring any new salespeople in this area? So, by asking a question at the end, Amanda keeps the conversation going and gives the listeners a chance to introduce themselves as well. The question at the end is optional or your choice. In summary, job seekers should have a short prepared description or an elevator speech that they can use to introduce themselves when networking. A good elevator speech includes your name and current job, what you are looking for, something from a past experience, and a short description of your best job skill. Even though it is short, it can give other people a lot of information about you. In the next video, we will talk about how to deliver your elevator speech with confidence.
Hello! In this video, we're going to talk about the pronunciation and delivery of a networking elevator speech. When we are networking, we not only need to think about what we are saying, but also how we are saying it. We should be aware of our word choices and how we say them. Speakers who use effective stress, pausing, and intonation are often easier to understand and show confidence. We will start by defining stress, pausing, and intonation, and then we will look at an example of how the delivery can show confidence. So, what are stress, pausing, and intonation? When we talk about stress, we mean words that are longer and louder. Stressed words are usually important keywords that you want the listener to hear clearly. Let's look at an example sentence from Amanda's elevator speech. Which words are longer and louder? I've been in sales for about 5 years. In this sentence, the word sales and 5 years are stressed. These are the words that the listener needs to hear clearly. Pauses are also important when speaking. Pauses are the short silence between words. In English, there's usually a pause after stressed words. Some speakers have longer or shorter pauses, but there is a pause. Let's look at the same sentence and notice the words that are said together and where to pause. I've been in sales for about 5 years. Amanda pauses after the word sales and 5 years. You should also notice that the pause follows the words with the most stress. Intonation is the rising or falling of a sound. Intonation is used to show that you're asking a question or ending a statement. Rising intonation usually signals that the speaker isn't finished speaking or signals a yes or no question. Falling intonation is used to signal the end of a statement or a WH question that begins with who, what, when, where, or how. Let's look at Amanda's intonation. Notice how her intonation falls at the end of the statement. I'm really good at listening to customers. Now notice that her intonation rises at the end of this yes or no question. Do you know if Toyota is hiring any new salespeople in this area? Intonation is important because it shows your level of confidence. If Amanda has too much rising intonation, she would sound like she's asking too many questions or that she's not sure of herself. On the other hand, too much falling intonation can make her sound like she's impatient or unfriendly. In a networking elevator speech, you want to show confidence but not sound impatient or unfriendly. If Amanda doesn't sound confident, the other people will not be confident in her skills or abilities. Likewise, if she sounds impatient, the other people may think she's not easy to work with. Now, I'm going to say the networking elevator speech and model the stress, pausing, and intonation that shows confidence. Pay attention to the words that are louder. Also notice how I pause and the intonation that I use. Hello, I'm Amanda Smith, and I've been in sales for about 5 years. I'm currently looking for a sales position in the auto industry. One of the things I like most about sales is meeting and talking with new customers all the time. I'm really good at listening to customers, and I'm able to understand what they really want. Do you know if Toyota is hiring any new salespeople in this area? Let's review what we've learned about the pronunciation in networking elevator speeches. Job seekers who use stress, pausing, and intonation effectively appear more confident and are more likely to be successful in their networking. Now, go on to a game to hear different elevator speeches. Use what you know about stress, pausing, and intonation to choose the best networking elevator speeches.
While attending a professional conference in another city, imagine that you just arrived at a social event with many people who work in the same industry as you: medicine, engineering, education, etc. While you are learning about new things in your field, you are also meeting new people who work in the same industry.
These people work for other companies or organizations, and they may know about available jobs. Whenever you meet new people in a professional setting, it is important that you have a short description that you can use to introduce yourself to others. We've looked at things to say in a networking elevator speech and how to stress certain words and pause in specific places. Now it is your chance to try it out.
Hello, my name is Robin Turner, and I've been an English language instructor for over 15 years. I taught English in many different programs in Japan, Bulgaria, and New York. I'm looking to work with other instructors to help build online courses. I really enjoy working with international students because I learn so much about different people, places, and cultures. One of my best skills is being flexible and willing to try new things. Hello, and welcome to the final unit in career development. In this unit, we're going to talk about the last step in the job search process, the job interview. By now, you've written a great resume and cover letter, you've practiced your networking elevator speech, and you got a job interview. In this video, we will go over some important things to know about job interviews in the United States. This is your chance to answer questions about your skills and qualifications, ask questions about the job or the company, and make a positive impression on the employer. In later videos, we will focus on the language of questions, show you some sample questions you could hear in a job interview, and how to answer them. At the end of the unit, you will record your own answer to a typical job interview question. Let's begin with some basic information about job interviews. A job interview is a formal meeting between an employer and a job seeker to decide if the person should get the job. The employer is called the interviewer and is the person asking the questions. The job seeker is called the interviewee and is the person answering the questions. Job interviews are usually in person or face-to-face and are quite formal. Sometimes interviews can be done by phone or video conference. To be more successful, job seekers can prepare for an interview by practicing answers with specific examples of their skills and qualifications from their past experience. Interviews are a great chance to explain your qualifications and transferable skills with examples or short stories. For example, many employers look for people who can show leadership skills or creativity in solving problems. You can prepare answers that show you have these skills by using examples from your past work experiences or education. Remember, you're not memorizing answers, but just preparing some short, specific examples that you can use to answer common interview questions. For example, if an interviewer said, "Tell me about a time that you solved a problem," I would talk about how I created a document to help other teachers plan their schedules. Here's another example question. If the interviewer says, "What did you learn from working at XYZ company?" I would answer by saying, "I learned many things about new software and computer programs to manage information in a busy office." By having a short, prepared example, I would feel more confident in my answer. I can always add more information in the interview and give more details, but at least I have something to say when an interviewer asks these questions. Sometimes interview questions can be difficult to answer. It is a good idea to ask for clarification or repetition if you don't understand the question. You will learn how to do this in a later video. Before an interview, job seekers should prepare a list of questions that they want to ask the interviewer about the company or about the job itself. By asking 2 or 3 questions, the candidate shows interest in the job and the company. Some examples of possible questions to ask are 1. What are the daily responsibilities of this job? 2. What computer equipment or software does the company use? Finally, job seekers should make a positive impression by looking professional. They do this by wearing professional clothes, such as a business suit or dress. You should be on time or early to the interview. During the interview, keep eye contact with the interviewer, give clear and honest answers, and bring extra copies of important documents like resumes or certifications. In summary, job seekers should be prepared for job interviews with examples of their skills and qualifications to answer the questions. Job seekers should also ask a couple questions about the organization or the job duties. And finally, job seekers should make a positive impression by presenting themselves professionally. Now, go on to a reading which tells you more information about job interviews.
Hi there. In this video, we are going to discuss some typical interview questions. We will discuss 2 types of these questions and finally look at a few questions you should ask in an interview. In a typical interview, the interviewer, or interviewers, as sometimes there may be more than one person, is there to find out if you are the right person for the job. If you are in an interview or preparing for one, then congratulations. You have got this far because the employer is seriously considering you as a possible employee. However, you now need to show them that you really are the person for the job. You can do this by answering the questions the interview asks you in an honest and detailed way. Honest because the interviewer wants to know if you are the same person you say you are in your resume and cover letter. And detailed because you want to give enough information in your responses. During an interview, some questions will be direct and some will be indirect. An example of a direct question is, why are you a good fit for this job? Or why do you want to work for this company? These questions should be pretty clear to understand and answer. Since both questions use why, you should give reasons in your answers. So you might say in your response, I believe I'm a good fit for this company because I have the necessary skills and experience to fit right in and help the company grow. However, indirect questions are more difficult to recognize. An example of an indirect question is, so tell me a little bit about yourself. It's called an indirect question because the question doesn't begin with a WH word like what, where, when, why, who, and how, which direct questions often use. However, it is still a question, and you need to listen carefully during the interview for these types of indirect questions. Let's look at another example of an indirect question. I wonder if you could tell me about a time when you faced a challenge and you overcame that challenge. Again, no WH word is used at the beginning of the question, but the interviewer uses the expression, I wonder if you could tell me. The interviewer is asking you to share an example from your own life when you had a challenge or a problem and explain how you solved that problem. So, when you hear this expression, you should recognize it as a question and be ready to answer it. One final example of an indirect question is, I'd like to know what type of skills you have that make you qualified for this job. The speaker uses the expression, I'd like to know, which means, can you tell me? Finally, in a typical interview in the US, not only does the interview ask you questions, but you will usually have an opportunity at the end of the interview to ask your own questions. The interviewer might say, do you have any questions for me? Or do you have any questions of your own? To make a good impression, it's really important that you have already prepared at least 2 questions before the interview, and you ask these at this point. The questions should be related to the job or organization in some way. So, for example, you might ask, what opportunities are there for professional development in this company? Or, what is the next step in the interview process? So, now we've discussed some common questions in job interviews. Next, we're going to look at some ways you can ask for clarification in an interview when you don't understand the question. Thanks for watching.
Hello! In this video, we'll be looking at asking for clarification and repetition in an interview. We will discuss what asking for clarification and repetition means and give some examples of each. Clarification is when you don't understand something the interviewer says, so you ask him or her to make it clearer. Repetition is when you ask the interviewer to repeat or say again something that they said. In a job interview, there may be times when you won't understand every question an interviewer asks you. This may be especially true if you're doing an interview in a language that is not your first, such as English. It is perfectly normal that sometimes you won't understand everything the interviewer asks you. You shouldn't panic. Good interviewees have the same difficulty, but they usually have some strategies or ways of working around a difficulty that allows them to better understand what the interviewer is asking. Asking for clarification and repetition are 2 such strategies. Let's imagine the interviewer just asked you the following question. Could you tell me what kind of skills you might bring to this position? Now, let's say you don't understand the question. We're going to look at 3 useful expressions you can use to either ask the interviewer for clarification or repetition. The first expression is, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Could you repeat that, please? The interviewee begins by apologizing for not understanding what was said. I'm sorry. This shows politeness. The interviewee then goes on to say that he or she didn't understand. I didn't understand your question. Finally, the interviewee asks politely if the interviewer could repeat the question by saying, "Could you repeat that, please?" Notice how could is used here, which is a more polite or less direct way of asking for something. Could you repeat that, please? The second expression is, I'm not quite sure I understood you correctly. Did you mean? In this case, the interviewee is making sure that he or she understands the question the interviewer just asked. The interviewee might say, I'm not quite sure I understood you correctly. Did you mean what type of qualifications will I use in this job? The interviewer will usually say yes or no and then give more explanation. So the interviewer might say, actually, no, I was asking what kind of skills might you bring to this position? Notice how the interviewee first uses the expression, I'm not quite sure I understood you correctly. The interviewee could have said, I didn't understand you. But I'm not quite sure I understood you correctly is more polite and therefore sounds better. Let's look at one final expression. If I understand you correctly, you're asking. Again, the interviewee uses a more polite expression rather than saying, I don't understand you, which could sound too direct to the interviewer. If I understand you correctly, you're asking me what kind of skills I will bring to this job. The interviewer might then say, yes, that's correct. In this video, we have looked at ways of asking an interviewer to repeat or clarify information in a question. These are useful expressions you can use if you don't fully understand what the interviewer is asking you. Next, we will play a game to practice appropriate interview questions.
Hello. In this and the next and final video in our course, we are going to look at some of the do's and don'ts of an interview. We will look at what are acceptable things to see and hear in an interview in the United States and what are unacceptable things to see and hear. By the end of these two videos, you should have a clear understanding of what a good interview should look and sound like. Let's get started. We're going to begin by looking at the beginning of an interview. This is when the interviewee will first meet the interviewer and perhaps make some small talk before the actual interview begins. As you watch, ask yourself the question, is this interviewee making a good first impression? Why or why not? After the scene, we'll come back and discuss your answers.
Come in. Come in.
Am I in the right place for the job interview?
Are you Michael Flatley?
The last time I checked, I was.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. I'm Michael Flatley. I'm really sorry I'm late. The train took forever getting here. The public transportation in this city, I hate it. May I sit?
Sure.
I hope you agree that this was not the greatest of starts to an interview. First, the interviewee was late, which is not something you should ever be for an interview. Then he came dressed unprofessionally. Finally, his manner was too informal and casual for a professional situation like an interview. Let's try that once again, shall we? Again, ask yourself if this candidate is making a good first impression.
Come in.
Hi, Miss Hernandez?
Yes, are you Michael Flatley?
That's right. I hope I'm not too early.
Oh, not at all. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Did you have any trouble finding the building?
No, not at all, thank you.
Please have a seat and we'll get started.
Great.
Much better, I think you'll agree. No lateness, no unprofessional dress, no informal manner. So far, so good. I hope you'll agree that this candidate has made a good first impression. In this video, we've looked at the beginning of an interview, the moment you walk in the door to the moment the questions begin. In the next video, we'll look at the remainder of the interview and look at some more do's and don'ts. Hello. In this and the next and final video in our course, we are going to look at some of the do's and don'ts of an interview. We will look at what are acceptable things to see and hear in an interview in the United States and what are unacceptable things to see and hear. By the end of these two videos, you should have a clear understanding of what a good interview should look and sound like. Let's get started. We're going to begin by looking at the beginning of an interview. This is when the interviewee will first meet the interviewer and perhaps make some small talk before the actual interview begins. As you watch, ask yourself the question, is this interviewee making a good first impression? Why or why not? After the scene, we'll come back and discuss your answers.
Come in. Come in.
Am I in the right place for the job interview?
Are you Michael Flatley?
The last time I checked, I was.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. I'm Michael Flatley. I'm really sorry I'm late. The train took forever getting here. The public transportation in this city, I hate it. May I sit?
Sure.
I hope you agree that this was not the greatest of starts to an interview. First, the interviewee was late, which is not something you should ever be for an interview. Then he came dressed unprofessionally. Finally, his manner was too informal and casual for a professional situation like an interview. Let's try that once again, shall we? Again, ask yourself if this candidate is making a good first impression.
Come in.
Hi, Miss Hernandez?
Yes, are you Michael Flatley?
That's right. I hope I'm not too early.
Oh, not at all. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Did you have any trouble finding the building?
No, not at all, thank you.
Please have a seat and we'll get started.
Great.
Much better, I think you'll agree. No lateness, no unprofessional dress, no informal manner. So far, so good. I hope you'll agree that this candidate has made a good first impression. In this video, we've looked at the beginning of an interview, the moment you walk in the door to the moment the questions begin. In the next video, we'll look at the remainder of the interview and look at some more do's and don'ts.
Hello, and welcome to our company. I'm glad you could come to talk about the job opening. I've read your resume and I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you about your skills and past experience. First, I'd like to know a little bit more about you. I wonder if you could tell me about a time when you faced a challenge and what you did to overcome that challenge.
Well, after my husband and I moved to California and our children started school there, I decided that I wanted to get my master's degree in English. Lots of reading and papers to write. As you can imagine, this was a real challenge, taking care of my children, taking classes, and working in my husband's business. But I'm a very determined person, and luckily my family was very supportive of me, so I could take classes in the evenings and on weekends. Of course, I didn't sleep very much for about 3 years, and sometimes I missed spending time on the weekends with my family, but I kept going. And my family was so proud, and I was proud, when I finally got my master's degree.
Hi, and welcome to the final video in our course.
As we said in the first video, this course was designed to help you improve your English language skills and your understanding of the job application process. We hope you have learned a lot from the experience and now feel better prepared and more confident finding and applying for jobs you are interested in.
For many of you, your job search will not simply end as soon as this course does. As we mentioned before, many of us change jobs and careers throughout our working lives. On each occasion, we may have to go through the different steps we have discussed in this course. We hope you will learn and grow from each experience.
Please remember the importance of preparing an up-to-date, professional-looking resume and cover letter. Making a good first impression with an employer is vital. In addition, prepare for the job interview by researching the company and being ready to answer typical interview questions.
We really enjoyed working with you, and we wish you all the best in your future studies and careers. Good luck!